Thank you everyone for joining us. The format, for those who haven't been on one of these before, basically what we do is we'll jump in, we'll hear a couple of minute pitch from Tyler, and then I will ask a set of questions. And please even start now. The last 5 or 10 minutes will be questions from the crowd. So if you have anything in mind, start sending them my way in the Q&A section of the webinar, and I'll be sure to ask Tyler them by the end of the webinar. So with that, Tyler, thank you for taking the time today and being on this webinar. Would love to hear from you a little bit about Gimme Radio. Give us your 2-minute pitch.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris, and thanks to KingsCrowd for setting this up. My name is Tyler Lenane. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Gimme Radio. Gimme Radio is reinventing digital music by focusing on building communities of passionate fans. I spent over a decade working in digital music, most recently at Apple Music, where I was leading up the BD effort, or business development, for their global carrier strategy. I was general counsel at Beats Music. I was part of the team that sold Beats to Apple. Prior to Beats, I was a general counsel at Mod, which I sold to Beats Electronics. And I started at Rhapsody back in 2006 in the early days. The other co-founders had very, very similar career paths. And what we saw was that working at these digital music services is that they were all focused on the same thing, right? They were focused on having massive catalogs that they could deliver to your phone with a search box and some algorithms for curation. What those services were very bad at doing was speaking to the passionate fan and really tapping into what makes people fall in love with music. And that was a huge missed opportunity, because passionate fans are the best customers, right? They're more loyal, they're engaged, and they spend almost 4 times as much as the average music consumer. So we started to think, how do you build an experience that focuses on these valuable fans? And that's what Gimme Radio is, really, right? We went back and we figured out that fans want a couple of things, right? They want to be able to interact with other fans. They want to be able to hear music that they're not going to hear anywhere else. They want to have the ability to purchase the goods and services that allow them to express their fandom. And most importantly, they want direct access to artists. And that's what Gimme Radio is. If you go and look at gimmeradio.com or our mobile app, your Android or iOS, you'll see that we took the best parts of radio, right? The shared listening experience, the personality-driven, having a DJ actually, and we combined it with the tools that I've been using in digital music for over a decade, right? Things that give us portability, accessibility, social networking, subscription services, e-commerce, to build a new platform. We started about 22 months ago. We built our first proof of concept. It is a music experience that is exclusively focused on metal. We chose metal because it is a large global audience. They spend a lot, they're very loyal, and nobody cares about them on the other major music services. We've had great success with metal, and now we're starting to turn this into other genres. We're doing this on a genre by genre basis to build a network of communities where, it's a huge opportunity, right? Anything other than pop and mainstream hip hop is ripe for this type of experience, because those other genres are already being focused on by the Spotify's, the Apple Music's. The one thing I'll say is, I understand, I've been through enough of these to know that if you don't know the product, it might be a little hard to understand exactly what I'm explaining. So I encourage you to go check it out. What you will see if you go on there is, it is like old school radio where you have a DJ, they are telling their stories, they're creating great backdrop and color and context for the music you're hearing. You can, and the real differentiating factor is that you will see that there is an ability for all of the listeners all over the world to interact directly with each other in this live feed, and most importantly, directly with the artist. So if you go on Gimme Radio today at 12 noon Pacific, you will see Dave Mustaine, the founder of Megadeth, Grammy Award-winning artist, in that live feed chatting with 2,000 plus of his fans, and he does it every single week, and that's how all of our shows are, and these fans love it, and they come they are just the most amazing customers you'll ever find, so much more so than what you see on the music services where I spent so long working on. They're more engaged, they're spending more, sticking around longer, and they are leaning in and participating in this amazing community that we built all over the world.
That's awesome. So one of the things that you talk about is, these communities aren't served well with the music with the, the Spotify's and the Pandoras of the world, and that they don't go deep enough. Can you give us just like a broad sense of what that looks like? So for metal, like, how many songs, I don't know what the right, KPI is, but how many songs do you have, or what is it that makes you so much more in depth than what they provide to users?
Yeah, I think it's a few things, Chris, right? The first thing is, we've already created about 3,500 hours of original programming content where you have people like Dave Mustaine or Randy Bly of Lamb of God telling these stories. And, those other services will fight tooth and nail to get a Beyonce track for a week, right? And spend yearly for it. You will never hear our content anywhere else except on Gimme Radio. You have to come here. The other thing that's really interesting about our content is we report each month to our collection societies and to Sound Exchange, which is the body that administers song publishing royalties on the sound recording side. We know for a fact from doing that reporting that we are playing anywhere between 25 and 50% of the songs that we play have never been played on any other online music service that has any sort of radio component. So, Spotify's radio, Pandora, satellite radio, this is content that's not being played. And the reason it's not being played is because those other services have either algorithms that are picking the songs, or they have an editorial team who's doing things on mood or activity basis or best of the 80s or things. So they're not making the same sort of choices that a human being DJ would, right? If you're a fan of metal, this reference, if you're not a fan of metal, this reference may not mean a lot, but like, as an example, one of our DJs will play a song from, let's say, Thin Lizzy, right? Who's like hard rock 70s type proto metal band, into a song by a band like Carcass, which is a very extreme, death metal band from still current. No algorithm would ever make those choices, right? But the band would, and the DJ would, because there was a clear line between those two artists when you listen to like the guitar harmonies that they're using, the songwriting, and that's what people are listening to us and saying, wow, I never knew about that band, but I like this band. And that's the best way to discover music. That's the best way to fall in love with music. It's the way it's worked for, since radio began and since we started listening to music.
Yeah. So in terms of finding that, how do you find these collections that no one else is finding? And then what is the process of getting that type of stuff licensed?
Yeah. So the process is really allowing the DJ to have the flexibility and freedom to make their own choices, right? We work with them to find and source the content that they want to play, right? They know about this, track that nobody else is playing that frankly would be forgotten if not for them. And we work with them to build that show with them. And then they record their voice tracks and then we schedule to be broadcast out. The live component of our service, right, which is what you will go if you log in and you see everyone chatting and they're interacting, that's all statutorily set, right? So the licensing is, you and I could start a online radio tomorrow.
Sure.
You have to go to the labels for the licenses. But you raise a great point, which I didn't get into in my quick 2-minute overview, which is we have launched a subscription tier of the service, right? So for $4.99 a month, you can go back and listen to all of those 3,500 hours that we've created on an on-demand and offline basis. Those we have already gone to the major labels and gotten the rights. And because it's not full on demand, our rates are actually more beneficial than a Spotify's or Apple's because we don't have the full on demand service. And I think it's really, really important, to reiterate that we've just started in metal, right? It was our proof of concept. It's been working great. We've already announced that we're going to launch country in May of this year. Country is a huge opportunity, and we're going to do the same things that we did in metal and country and build that community, focus on artists that aren't getting played on terrestrial radio or the other music services, and give those fans a home just like we did in the metal service. And then towards the end of this year, we'll launch other genres, and by the end of next year, we'll be at 7 genres.
7 genres. And are you hoping for a lot of kind of cross-pollination between communities where people are interested in multiple genres? Do you have any sense of what that kind of looks like?
Yeah, there will be some, although it sounds like they're so on either end of the spectrum. We've already seen that some of our metal fans can't wait for the country station, and they know that we're going to deliver the same type of value and great experience, so they're excited for that. And look, our long-term vision of building this network, really, it's really a platform play, right? It's building a network of genres where our name, Gimme Radio, is going to be so trusted that if you want to get the best jazz experience or the best punk rock experience, you're going to know that you're going to come to us, right? Even today, Gimme Radio merchandise is our highest selling item. You know, we have an e-commerce platform as well so that we can make revenue that way because these fans want to buy, you know, vinyl records and exclusive merchandise. And Gimme Radio t-shirts and hoodies are the #1 selling item in our store, and they're the best margin items as well, right? People love the brand only 22 months in. You know, I always say, like, if you are wearing an Amazon Music t-shirt, that's because you either work there or like your aunt or uncle works there, right? Like you don't buy, but people wear Gimme Radio shirts today, and we've only been around 22 months, 23 months.
Yeah, that's awesome. You know, you talked a little bit about it in the pitch, but what does your user engagement look like, and how much, you know, are users kind of spending on the platform?
So, you know, I think it's really great to look at our core listeners, the people, you know, we just launched a subscription service just a month or two ago. Let's look at those guys, right? Those are, you know, it's only about 400 people at this point, but they are spending monthly average revenue of $9.64, right? That's the $4.99 subscription, plus it's the other items that they're buying. Spotify just came out 2 weeks ago and said their average ARPU per month is $5.50. Right? So we're already doing better there, right? We're small, but you can see if you focus on those passionate fans, how much more valuable it is, right?
Yep.
These guys are spending an average of 21.5 hours in the service. That's one genre, one stream. Spotify and Pandora are 25 hours. So we're almost on par with those guys. Our core listeners are spending or making an average of 121 comments in that live feed each month. That's a real conversation. That's not leaving a note, right?
Yeah.
Our top commenters are making 2,000 plus comments a month, which is insane. I don't know where they work, but they should probably be fired, you know, because they're not working to listen to Gimme Radio.
That's really cool. So are there any challenges? You kind of talked about this DJ and, you know, they kind of tell you what music they want to find and whatnot. Are there challenges to scaling something like that that is more of an art than just an algorithm?
It is today. It is fairly manual process, right? And so we work very closely with the DJs. They create their shows. We have to go in and edit it and make it sound like it's great radio, right? So we're doing editing. We're making segues. We actually use the same software that SiriusXM uses. We just repurposed it for our use. And what that does, it allows us to have DJs all over the world. We have DJs in Chile. We have DJs in Sweden. We have DJs all across the United States, in Portugal. I mean, India, it's global. As we scale, right, we're already seeing the ways that we'll need to automate that process a bit. We won't take the human element out of it, but we'll cut down on the number of steps because we'll have the tools to automate that process and make it less burdensome on our production team. And that's part of what the raise is to create those tools.
So how have you, I know that you were in metal first because it's a really underserved community. I would say country, I don't know, from my perspective, I thought was somewhat well served. So how are you thinking about what genres to go into next and to get to that 7 over the next, you know, couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, I mentioned briefly, I know from working at the other music services where their attention has to be because of the deals that they have with the major labels. They absolutely need to focus on mainstream hip hop and pop, right? Everything else is an afterthought, whether it's classical, jazz, metal, punk. And country, you know, you would think it's very well served, but if you know anything about country, you know that there are basically 12 white dudes with cowboy hats on terrestrial radio that get played.
Right.
Women artists, there's a lot in the news, aren't getting played. Legacy country artists, you know, there's not really a home for them except maybe in a car commercial, right? You're not hearing deep catalog of Johnny Cash on the radio. You know, what's been deemed Americana or outsider or outlaw country, those are all sort of just, they're not really being focused on. And so, you know, there's a huge opportunity in country with those because there's all this other music that's not being highlighted on the services and on other radio. And remember, what's interesting about country is that the listeners are just starting to migrate from terrestrial radio, like the radio you hear in your car, to online digital music services. And what we're hearing from the music industry in Nashville is that a lot of these listeners are landing on Spotify or on Amazon, and you know, it doesn't feel like it's for them, right? It's a picture of Drake or Ed Sheeran, and they're not, it doesn't feel like home, right? And so we think we can create that for these country fans. And when we announced our launch a few weeks ago, we announced 3 DJs. And I think those 3 DJs really reflect the opportunity that we see, right? It's Brandy Clark, which is a Warner Brothers recording artist who is Grammy nominated, amazing singer-songwriter, amazing recording artist, doesn't get a lot of play, right? Doesn't get as much as she should. Joshua Headley, who's on Third Man Records, is, you know, this great sort of neoclassical traditionalist country, just amazing songwriter and singer and performer. Again, not on the normal channels that you would expect in country. And then Dylan Carmichael, who is this up and coming artist that's getting a lot of attention, but probably will take a very long time to really break in the traditional sort of go to radio and break,
Sure.
get into those 12 artists. So we're taking chances with people that have established audiences. They are performing to thousands of people each night, and yet they're not getting the attention on the regular channels, and we're going to give them that attention, and the fans are going to love it because they're going to find new music that they're not finding anywhere else.
Got it. So what's some of the feedback that you've heard from your customer base about the service?
I mean, it sounds like hyperbole or whatever, but like it is, you know, it's just these people, these fans are so grateful that somebody is actually speaking to them, right? That somebody's actually built a home. They call it their home. They talk about the other listeners as their family. And we get, you know, just the most gushing, you know, feedback on our that live chat and our social channels and direct feedback that's just, you know, so thankful that there's a place for them. And, you know, when we started, it was very much like, oh, we got to go out and we're going to compete with Spotify and Apple Music. And that's not really the case, right? Because what we're finding is these passionate fans, they will always have a subscription to those other services, right? Because they love music.
Right.
But that's like a utility, right? Just like you probably have a subscription to cable or Netflix or whatever. But when they want to go to really find out and be part and interact and be part of the community, they're coming to us and they're discovering music through us. And then they're going back to those other services and digging in deep. We are the true discovery portal for those online big retailer, you know, music guys. If they have the music, right? Because members, a lot of the stuff isn't even on there, but
Right.
it's actually complementary in a lot of ways.
Got it. No, that makes a ton of sense. And I could definitely see that, especially from knowing a lot of very passionate music fans. I know that there's always that issue. They're like, oh, you can't find what you want. Spotify sucks. So this makes a lot of sense to me. Cool. And in terms of, you know, I know that we had talked about it the last time we spoke, but in terms of like virality, it sounds like you've actually, you know, you just started a subscription business and it's a pretty small user base right now, but you've actually collected a pretty large user base of listeners. Can you talk to how large that is and kind of what the customer acquisition costs look like?
Yeah, we have over 135,000 registered verified users, right? So those are real emails that people have come in and actually listened to the service. When we're marketing and, you know, and firing on all cylinders, right? We're getting about 20% of those people active each month. And then, you know, our goal is to get the subscription service up to about between 10 and 20% of our active user base. We just launched, we're only in a couple of territories. We're just for US, and we just announced Germany, UK, and Australia. So that'll grow, right? And that's
Sure.
growing. And, you know, look, because we are so targeted on specific genres, we can be very hyper-targeted in our marketing and our marketing spend, right? So if we use the regular channels like a Facebook or Google AdWords, we're getting paid acquisition of customers for about 74 cents. When you blend that with our organic, it's sub 50 cents, and that's in North America, right? When you look at places like Latin America and Eastern Europe, it's, you know, under 20 cents, right? But it's very cost effective as compared to, you know, when you're trying to market, let's say another music service that's just trying to go as broad as possible. They've got to cast a far net, right? We can be very, very focused in our efforts.
Cool. And what are you, you know, on the other side of this, so you have your customers, but then there's also the artists. What are you hearing from artists about the service that Gimme Radio offers?
I mean, there was an article just came out today in a UK publication called God is in the TV, which is pretty well known there. You should go check it out. It's an article, and it's all with Dave Mustaine of Megadeth and Albert Mudrian, who runs a metal magazine called Decibel, and a guy named Will Carroll, who plays in the band Death Angel. And they will tell you, and you can see their quotes of like how much they love having this platform, right? Remember, if you're, you know, and not all our DJs are artists, right? We have writers, we have other tastemakers, we have visual artists, But, you know, if you're a performing artist, if you're not on tour and if you're not in an album cycle, you really don't have a way to be in front of your fans and connect with them, except maybe Twitter or, you know, other social channels, but that's pretty one directional, right?
Sure.
For someone like Dave Mustaine to go in and have 2,500 of his fans each week that he has direct contact with is unbelievably valuable to the artist, right? And that's what we're hearing from them, right? They love it. There are some artists that it's not for them, or they try it and they want to spend their time elsewhere, but for the people that get it, they absolutely think this is something that is, frankly, helping their careers.
Awesome. So in terms of the long-term vision of this business, do you see this as a standalone type business, or is this more of an acquisition to get, you know, these larger providers wanting a value-add partner that could give them a customer that's spending more and is more engaged, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, look, as a founder and as somebody, this is my baby. Like, I would love nothing more for it to be a standalone business and be a very, you know, in 3 years, be profitable and actually be a going concern, right? That's the dream.
Sure.
That being said, I do have responsibility to my, you know, investors and people that work here, and my, you know, that do I think we're ripe for an acquisition? Absolutely. And a lot of the people that we've been talking about, we've had very early stage conversations, and we're doing really interesting, right? There's tremendous pressure on those companies to be innovative, right? If you look at them, they're all offering the same value proposition, right? 50 million songs, search box, algorithmically or editorial driven content creation. There's a reason why Spotify is spending hundreds of millions of dollars on podcasting services, right? There's a reason that SiriusXM is buying or bought Pandora, right? It's because they have to differentiate their programming, right? And so I think what we're doing is creating some interest, and people are starting to perk their ears up because this is really innovative, right? We have engagement that they are not seeing on their platforms today.
Makes a ton of sense. So one of the questions coming in from the crowd is, why did you decide to do an equity crowdfunding round, and how much runway does this give you?
Sure, it's a great question. We first of all, so only, you know, the round we're doing does allow for equity crowdfunding, but it doesn't also preclude us taking sort of the traditional angel or investment fund checks, right? And so we're doing both. The reason why we wanted to do this is, and I should also preface it and say that this is our last, you know, round on a note, right? Unless something crazy happens, that is the plan. We will have to go out and do a priced round that will be more traditional with the VC type round, and that'll come, you know, in a matter of months. But in this interim, what I call almost like a bridge round, we needed to raise this capital to give us the runway to launch country successfully, build out further community tools for our live feed, because we know that's our differentiating, you know, secret sauce. And we do those things, we sort of hit the milestones we need to do that larger price round. The reason why we wanted to make equity crowdfunding part of that is because we talk so much about why community is so important to music, you know, and digital music, and it doesn't exist anywhere else except on Gimme Radio. We were like, let's put our money where our mouth is, right? Like, let's give the community the opportunity to actually own a piece of this service that they love. And what's interesting is that, you know, to date, we've had about 80 of our listeners, these metalheads, give an average of about $1,000. So it's like 80-something thousand that we've gotten through crowdfunding. That's not going to carry the day for the full round, but it's going to help us really close. And what better way to, you know, illustrate product market fit than to say, our listeners love this so much, they're willing to invest. And remember, some listener who's writing a check for $500 or $1,000, that's a lot, that's significant compared to somebody whose business it is to invest all day long, right?
Right.
That's meaningful money to these people. And that's just unbelievably flattering and proof that we've really hit a nerve here.
So another question that rolled in is, you know, in terms of being a customer, if I join metal and I'm paying for the metal subscription, once you start to roll out these other genres, do I get access to them as well, or do I need to repay each time?
It's a really, you know, insightful question, and one we think about all the time. I think we're going to have to do some testing on pricing. I can tell you what our general thought is. Today it's $4.99 for metal. You know, if you want to join country, that's $4.99, but if you want both, it's $6.99, right? And as we roll out, when you see in the future you're at 7 genres, maybe it's $9.99 for all 7, right? And that's the cap. But we'll have to figure that out. But the idea would be, they are not sort of completely isolated islands. There is some crossover there. We want to foster community amongst these different genres, but that community, you know, it's a bit of a Venn diagram, as you mentioned earlier, right? There's overlap, and people want to be, you know, people like more than one one genre, right? You might love jazz, metal, and country, and that's why we're going to do this for you.
Got it. Makes a ton of sense. In terms of what the makeup of the team will be once you kind of raise this capital, what are the holes and gaps you're trying to fill in your team to get country launched in the right way?
Yeah. So, you know, we've already built country for the most part. It's on my phone. It's
Nice.
playing metal music because we haven't plumbed through the content piece, but it's not very far away. We're able to do that quickly because we basically have templatized the process, right? And we'll be able to punch these out fairly quickly. So, you know, as we start to grow, what we'll need to do is hire a community manager for each genre, because it's absolutely important that you have somebody who's focused on the community. And then always hiring, you know, 1 to 2, you know, sort of programming and editorial experts. You have to have an authentic voice when you go into genres. You have to be real. These fans will sniff it a mile away if it's inauthentic, right? You have to be that authenticity. So we'll have to do that. And look, we are a tech company, so as we scale, engineering is always something that we'll have to do.
One of the questions from the crowd is, how do you manage being kind of this e-commerce and subscription business, and how do you think about, you know, your revenue split once you're kind of at scale? What does that look like? How much is going towards the e-commerce stuff, and how much goes to the subscription stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very good question. You know, one thing I didn't get into in the 2-minute sort of overview is we knew that when we built this service, you had to make it possible for the listeners to spend in multiple ways, right? People go on Apple Music today, they spend $9.99 a month. They can't spend $7 and they can't spend $12, right? That's crazy, right? People spend in different ways. They want to express or transact in different ways. So we've started to build a product where we have a subscription offering. And remember, it truly is a membership, right? It's not what, you know, it's not just pay to play. You pay, you get access to all the past shows on demand, but you also get, you know, a special personalized patch at month 3 with your username and location. You get a special t-shirt at month 9. You get an enamel pin at a year. You get all these things that are truly about the community and to keep you in longer and keep you engaged, right? We have an e-commerce platform, as you noted. It is pretty basic at this point, right? It is a Shopify store that's a little bit of a bolt-on. We have to make that more integrated. We are going to introduce, you know, things like we're talking to sponsors to sponsor content, right? We're talking about building out, you know, micropayment type items like tip jars, or being able to sort of personalize your user existence in our feed with avatars or badges, smaller amounts of money, being able to do things like that. It's really important to get at the end of the day, I do believe, you know, that our model shows that subscription will be the lion's share of that, but the e-commerce play is very important. Have something that is truly exclusive and truly, you know, just for Gimme Radio. We sell it very quick, and it's a great experience, and people love it, right? We're not going to compete necessarily with Amazon on selling a CD or a vinyl record that you can get anywhere. Where we're going to, you know, really shine is being able to create things that fans want and only get from us, and that's big business, right? Look at things like look at, you know, any of these fan sites. Merch, right? Merchandise is what moves the needle for these guys.
Once users, you know, once you kind of build out the platform more, will users have the ability to kind of become their own DJs and kind of source and select and create their own playlist that people can follow as well?
Absolutely. It's again, key to building community. Today we have a listener show that we run every other week where listeners, you know, basically submit playlists, and they get chosen by our programming director, and they get a show, a 2-hour show. It's prime time in the week. And that's great. Right now, these fans, they're invested in the product. Their show ends up in the archive. They tell their friends about it. They, you know, it's amazing, right? We want to do more of that, right? In my vision, we would have listener shows, you know, build them all day long in the archive, let the community upvote the ones that they love the most, and those ones get on air, or something like that, right? Again, to allow the community really to have another stake in the product, right? You can't do that on any other music service.
So last question for you here. I know we're running up on the time. Where do you see Gimme Radio, you know, 5 years down the road?
5 years down the road is like an eternity, as you know, and we're thinking about that. But look, I think that, we've had some discussions with things that are even outside of music, right? With some movie studios, some sports organizations. I think that if we continue to learn how to build these engaged communities, this isn't just particular to music, right? This is, I see 5 years, we have our global network of Gimme Radio, but I also see this as a platform where we take it to, building products for horror movie fanatics, right? Or for people that are sports fans, having that interaction is not just particular to music. Look at all the time people spend on podcasts because they're these niche interests, right? What if you were able to open that up and have a dialogue with the people on the other end of, that podcast all over the world, right? Like, that's what we're really building. In a lot of ways, what we're doing is not so familiar, similar to Spotify. It's more similar to what's going on in the gaming industry with things like Twitch, right?
Yeah.
So, we're out. The first step that we need to do is get country, prove that we can do this in the other genre that's really big. That's why we're doing this raise. We're raising 435,000 is our target. We're at 85% of that. We should have 373 or so hit in the next hour. We're really close. We can do that. It closes on Friday at midnight Eastern time. We wrap this up, launch country, and then we're onto the races, onto more genres, and building that platform, which in 5 years' time is a huge, huge opportunity.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This has been a lot of fun. I think there were some great questions from the crowd, so thank you everyone for joining. And make sure you invest.
Yeah, and remember, go to our Seed Invest profile, which is www.seedinvest.com/Gimme Radio. Tons of information there about the company. There's some financial information in the data room, backgrounds on all the founders. Please go check it out and join us as we really do change the way that people experience music.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I think you're a terrific founder and someone that we can all learn from. So hopefully everyone got something out of it and have a terrific day.
Yeah, you too, Chris. Thanks, everybody.
All right, take care now. Bye.
Bye-bye.